Three chefs, 4 ingredients, only one chance to win. The challenge. Create an unforgettable meal from the items their audience voted for before time runs out. Their distinguished group of subscribers will critique their work, and they must face the dreaded chopping block. Who will win their audience's taste buds, and who will be chopped? The ingredients are beets, liquid smoke, eggplant, and coffee. Let's meet one of our contestants.
So I'm glad that this time all of the ingredients have a somewhat savory component to them. And the first thing that I thought of when I thought of both coffee and liquid smoke is that it could be used in a rub for a vegan meat substitute. And then the beets are a little more tricky with eggplant. I feel like they don't typically go together. But I decided to come up with the idea to make an eggplant Reuben, which is a classic sandwich of rye bread with sauerkraut, Russian dressing, Swiss cheese, and corned beef. And I'm going to be using eggplant as my corned beef substitute, but because corned beef is typically pink, I think the beets are going to be perfect to help sort of dye the eggplant. And the beets, the coffee, and the liquid smoke also have a nice earthy and umami flavor, so I'm going to use that to marinate my eggplant with a bunch of other spices that are typical to corned beef. So I think it'll be a really authentic flavor. And another good thing about corned beef that I found out in my research is that it is typically boiled and then sliced. So I think the eggplant is actually going to have a really similar texture to that. I'm going to roast it so it gets thinner but a little bit more chewy. And corned beef, because it's boiled, it isn't typically super fatty, I think. So I think the eggplant is going to work out. As long as I can pull it off with the flavor thing, I think this is going to be good. I'm pretty happy with my creativity on this one. So let's see. Okie dokie. So first things first, we're going to start out with our eggplant corned beef. And obviously we're going to need an eggplant. So I'm using one that is pretty fat. My sandwich bread was small, so I wanted one that was fat so I could just slice it crosswise, and that way it would cover my sandwiches. And so we're just going to peel our eggplant, and then after we've peeled it, we're just going to slice it into thin slices. The thickness of the slices is actually really important because if it's too thick, they're going to be mushy, and if it's too thin, they're going to dry out too much, so you want them to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. After you've finished that, you're going to place them in a large bowl or glass container and just press the eggplant down. We're going to be pouring a marinade on top of this. So moving on to our marinade, we're going to be toasting a wide variety of spices to get that corned beef flavor, which has a decent amount of spices. They will all be listed in my blog post. There are quite a few, but if you really want that authentic flavor and taste, I would recommend doing it. So you're going to add all your spices to a non-stick pot and just toast them over medium-high heat, stirring pretty frequently with a spatula so nothing burns. Once the spices are fragrant and you can sort of smell them wafting into the air, we're going to add in some water, as well as some vinegar, a little bit of coconut sugar for some caramelization and sweetness. I'm also adding some instant coffee to increase the depth of flavor to this recipe, and it's also one of the ingredients, as well as some liquid smoke. We're also going to add in some cloves of garlic and a chopped beet. I used about a medium beet and I peeled it, and this is going to add both color and flavor to the recipe. And the most marinades use salt to brine the corned beef, but we're actually going to be using a vegan flavored beef broth paste. This has salt in it, but it also has a sort of beefy flavor to it, so it's going to make our eggplant taste more like corned beef. I got it on Amazon. I will link it in my blog post and in the description of the video if you want to check it out. I do think it tastes really authentic and it's sort of crucial to this recipe. So next you're going to mix everything together so it is well incorporated and all of the beef broth paste has dissolved, and then bring the mixture to a boil, and then once it is boiling, you're going to let it simmer for just about 60 seconds or so just to help all of the flavors melt together and incorporate. Then at this point, you're going to remove the marinade from the heat and pour it over our sliced eggplant. And we're going to let our eggplant marinate overnight. And I realized as I was pouring this that my container was way too small and the beet chunks weren't going to get evenly distributed and help to dye the eggplant. So after I finished pouring the marinade over it, I actually transferred this into a Ziploc bag, and then just in case the Ziploc bag had a hole in it, I put it into a larger bowl, as you can see right here. And I think this helped for all of the eggplant pieces to be coated a little more, and it was also easier to move the eggplant around a little periodically. But yes, so you're going to let this sit overnight, and then the following day you will open up your bag to see that the eggplant has really absorbed the flavor of the marinade as well as some of the color from the beets. So now we're going to roast our eggplant. You can either grease or line a baking tray with a silicone mat and just plop all of your eggplant pieces on there. I will admit they do look a little hot pink now, but as you will see, the color actually disappears quite a lot in the baking process, which is why you want them to be super intense before you actually cook them. Oh, and I did want to mention that you can save your beets. I know a lot of you guys are concerned about food waste, but you essentially just made pickled beets. So I just put them in a glass jar, seal the lid, and store those in my fridge to eat later throughout the week. So now you can see the eggplant does lose quite a lot of that pink color, but the sides are still pink, which is what we're going for with the Reuben. And I also think that the thickness and the texture of the eggplant at this point is as spot on to corned beef as eggplant is ever going to be. So the next step for our sandwich would be to make a vegan Russian dressing, and a Russian dressing is kind of like a Thousand Island dressing, but it is spicier. So we're going to start out by making some cashew mayo, which is just a combination of cashews, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, and water. And then the rest of the ingredients are typical to a Russian dressing. So we have some ketchup, some prepared horseradish, some vegan Worcestershire sauce, which can be hard to find in stores, but you can always find it online. We're also going to add some white onion, some paprika, and a dash or two of hot sauce or just hot sauce to taste. So you're going to blend that up until smooth and creamy. And then last but not least, we're going to add in some relish and a little more hot sauce just because I like things spicy. And we're going to mix it together. This way the relish chunks stay intact and get some texture to the sauce without having it be a completely smooth paste. So now it's time to assemble our actual Reuben sandwich. So a typical Reuben uses rye bread. I found this vegan rye bread. Most rye bread is vegan though, at a local store here in Vancouver. And then I'm going to top it with some vegan cheese. This is optional if you're trying to be a little bit more healthy, but you know, it isn't a Reuben, so I'm just going for authenticity here, guys. So I toasted this until the cheese was nice and melty, and now it's time to assemble our sandwich. So I put a thick layer of sauerkraut onto the bottom of the sandwich, followed by a thick layer of Russian dressing. Theoretically, you could put the Russian dressing down first, but to be honest, I mostly did this because it looks better in photos that way. Then we're going to layer our eggplant corned beef and place that on the sandwich. And then just flip the other sandwich piece with the melted cheese up on top. And that is pretty much it. We got a nice, thick, juicy looking eggplant Reuben sandwich. The eggplant portion of the sandwich itself is gluten-free. So if you are gluten-free, you could easily substitute GF bread as well. All right, guys, we have finished our completed Reuben sandwich, and here it is. Now time for the taste test. But first, what did you guys make?
What did we make?
We made beet burgers with eggplant bacon.
And we made like a coffee rub for the burgers.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out pretty bomb.
Yeah, I tried them. They were good. If you want to see my thoughts, head over to their channel. The video will be linked below.
Smell very Reuben-y.
They do.
Thank you. I just gave Chris half a sandwich.
I mean,
Very good.
oh my god. Shit.
Whoa, language.
Sorry, excuse me, sorry.
That's really
It's
good.
okay. It's rated R over here. No.
I've never had eggplant that tastes like that.
This is so good.
Thank you. It was all in the brine. I had to test the recipe like 3 times. The first 2 times, eggplant was a total fail. I'm like, it just tastes like salt. So
You did it.
thank you. Your beef burgers were bomb too. So now you guys get to vote in the top corner of your screen. That one.
I think it's over here.
Whose recipe you think wins, and then comment below your ingredients suggestions for the next challenge. So I'm going to pin a comment there, and please only comment 1 suggestion, not 4, because we picked the top ones, and if you comment 4
We
In
don't
one
know which one
comment,
you really
yeah.
it
want.
doesn't make sense.
So, or you could separate the comments.
yeah,
right?
you can comment as much as you want, just 1 comment, 1 ingredient per comment, please.
yeah. And
All
make
right.
sure you put it on the pin post, sorry.
Yes.
Because like people on our post, that's getting confusing.
Pin post.
It gets
Pin
crazy
post,
in the
go.
comment section. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.